In part 3 of this lecture, we will discuss the complications associated with DKA. Cerebral edema is the most dreaded of all complications and is the most common cause of mortality. The incidence is less than 1%, but the mortality can range from 20 to 50% in children with DKA. Study by Glaser showed that the occurrence is highest during the initial 6 hours of initiation of therapy and declines gradually over the next 24 hours. Children tend to have subclinical edema at the time of presentation, which can be diagnosed by imaging. The cause of DKA related cerebral injury is not fully understood. The possible pathophysiological mechanisms include dehydration and cerebral hypoperfusion before the therapy is initiated, overhydration and hyponatremia which occur during therapy, which lead to osmotic disequilibrium that causes disruption of blood-brain barrier, which gets compounded by the occasional use of alkali therapy that causes intracellular acidosis. Since overhydration was a major factor implicated, the PECAN study group compared two different fluid rates, slow versus fast, two different fluids, the isotonic versus hypotonic, and two different deficit volumes, assuming 5% versus 10%, and they compared the outcome of cerebral edema. The study group noticed that there were no differences in acute or post-recovery neurological outcomes in children with DKA. A subgroup analysis showed that rapid volume correction was better in correcting acidosis and had less cognitive impairment. So it showed that the variation in fluid treatment protocols are not the cause of cerebral injury. So a two-hit model currently proposed include fluctuation in cerebral blood flow during dehydration and reperfusion injury that occur following initiation of therapy trigger a cascade of inflammation that leads on to cerebral edema. Children less than 5 years of age, new onset diabetes, severe acidosis, increased blood urea nitrogen at the time of presentation indicating degree of hypovolemia, low initial partial pressures of carbon dioxide, and failure of measured serum sodium to rise during DKA correction are common factors that are associated with risk of cerebral edema. The symptoms may range from minor to florid raised ICP. The minor symptoms include headache, vomiting, irritability or lethargy, and hypertension. The major criteria include deterioration in mental status after initiation of therapy, inappropriate bradycardia, incontinence inappropriate for age. The diagnostic features include abnormal motor or verbal response to pain, decorticate or decerebrate posturing, abnormal pupillary response or other cranial nerve palsy, and abnormal neurogenic respiratory pattern. The management in cerebral edema include reduction in fluid administration rates, initiation of other anti-raised ICP measures, and immediate hyperosmolar therapy if indicated. The hyperosmolar therapy may include mannitol or 3% saline. A study by Deckersi in 43,000 children showed that the use of mannitol has come down over the years and use of 3% saline has increased over time. However, this study also showed that there was a 2.7 odds of mortality with 3% saline when compared to mannitol. Hence, 3% saline needs to be tested further before recommending for cerebral edema. Initiation of fluid replacement before insulin therapy, use of isotonic fluids during the initial part of resuscitation, pre-hospital IV and oral fluid that were administered has to be factored into the calculation of deficit correction. A restoration of fluid deficit slowly over 36 to 48 hours has been found to prevent cerebral edema. Another common complication encountered is persistent acidosis. It is defined as bicarbonate of less than 10 despite 8 to 10 hours of therapy. It could be high anion gap or normal anion gap acidosis. In setting of high anion gap acidosis, we need to think of improper insulin dose, dilution and rate of infusion. Incorrect administration and inadequate flushing of tubings can lead to inappropriate delivery of insulin. Rarely, it could be secondary to lactic acidosis or renal compromise. Normal anion-gap acidosis is usually associated with hyperchloremia due to excessive use of chloride-containing fluids. This is usually innocuous and resolves spontaneously. The third important complication observed is acute kidney injury. Study by Hirsch and colleagues showed that out of 165 children who were hospitalized with DKA, they observed a 64% had AKI. What was more concerning was almost 65% had either stage 2 or stage 3 AKI during hospitalization. During the initial phase of diabetes, due to polyuria, the GFR increases excessively. Hence, this causes an increase in chloride load to the tubule, which is sensed by macula densa. The macula densa then releases local mediators, which causes afferent arteriolar constriction, leading on to increase in hydrostatic pressure, thereby decreasing GFR. Chloride could be a mediator or just a bystander during the process. Studies that compared low chloride solutions like plasmalite or ringer lactate with 0.9% saline had shown variable results. Further studies are needed to prove balanced fluids as a resuscitation fluid of choice in DKA. Sepsis is common in children with diabetes. Any child who presents with fever or hypothermia, hypotension, refractory acidosis, especially those with lactic acidosis, sepsis has to be thought of upfront. Early initiation of empiric broad spectrum antibiotic and close monitoring for signs of septic shock is essential. DKA increases the risk of fungal infection, especially mucormycosis in these children. Pancreatitis is another common complication which can coexist with DKA. Remember, 40% of children can have mild elevation of amylase and lipase during DKA episode. Abdominal pain can occur with DKA per se. Hence, it is difficult to differentiate these two conditions clinically. Anticipation is key, and in suspected cases, a CT abdomen can be confirmatory. Venous thrombosis can also occur in children with DKA as dehydration and hyperosmolarity predisposes to a hypercoagulable state. Children with central line are more prone to develop venous thrombosis. Early removal of indwelling catheters has been associated with lesser incidence of venous thrombosis. Finally, can we prevent DKA? All children with diabetes need to have a good home glucose and urine ketone monitoring. Insulin has to be continued even during sickness. The fluid intake has to be adequate to prevent dehydration. Early and adequate treatment of common infections in these children. Seeking early medical help can prevent them from going on to severe acidosis. If you like these videos, please subscribe us at Little Criticos. You can also follow us at these platforms for weekly updates.